finish his plate. Come after me! I'm the man! I'm for you! Can't wait! Let's go!
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gardy3, and to my right, of course, like always, it is Mo, the basketball genius. Mo, how you doing today?
Doing well. Appreciate everybody out there in the chat, everybody that's checking out the N1 podcast. Appreciate the support, guys. Let's go.
Alrighty. So we won't even waste any time. We always like to start with that underrated player of the week. And this one kind of got me thinking. I was talking into a Discord with a bunch of different guys. And that's kind of how this idea popped into head, because we were talking about how Josh Smith would do in this era. And it kind of gave me an idea for this week. Mo, let's underrated player of the week. Some other players who we think would do well in a different era.
Off the top of my head, I was actually thinking about Allen Houston from the New York Knicks. If you think about his skill set and his shooting ability, Allen Houston is like Klay Thompson with a handle. Allen Houston can actually break people down off the dribble. If you don't know Allen Houston, in the chat, go to YouTube, type in Allen Houston. You can type in Allen Houston versus Kobe, and you can watch Allen Houston give Kobe about 53, I believe. Allen Houston in this era where the floor is spaced and it's not such a grind, he would be a monster.
Man, Allen Houston with a green light like he would have in this era would be such a fun watch. I'm not going to lie. That's a really good one. I do love that. Man.
Who's yours?
So I kind of got two, and because I decided to think, I thought of one for playing now would be perfect for past eras, which is I'm gonna take Rudy Gobert. I'm gonna put him back in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
I think he's such a phenomenal shot blocker and rim deterrent now when the floor is super spaced. I would love to see how good he would do when the floor was more cramped. It almost feels like it would be more his speed, so I think that would be a fun watch.
He would probably average 5 or 6 blocks a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And my we got Kyle saying run TMC. Okay, yeah.
Prime Tim Hardaway. If you could take prime Tim Hardaway and drop him in today's NBA, talk about somebody living at the free throw line because you couldn't touch him with that crossover and his strength. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Somebody that I would love to see from the past play now. This one was a tough one. I almost went two ways with this one as well. Shout out to Detlef Schrempf.
Oh, another one. He's nice.
But I ended up ultimately going Peja Stojakovic.
Peja was a bad man. Yeah. Peja's jump shot was water. Like, he was a bad man on those Kings team later on with the Mavs. Peja was nice. You know what? I'm gonna throw an extra one in. We kind of brought him up. Chris Mullin at his peak in this era with the way the floor is spaced, the ball and body movement. Chris Mullin with that jump shot, and he was kind of like Paul Pierce, not a freakish athlete, but he could get anywhere he wanted to on the floor. Chris Mullin in his peak, that's scary.
No, absolutely, and Chris Mullin was he like 6'8"? He was a taller dude.
About 6'7", 6'8". Yeah, he was a big guy.
I can only imagine all the matchup problems you'd cause putting him at the 4 if you needed to. Woo!
That's another thing. The small ball era, a lot of these guys would get cross matchups because they could play multiple positions in this era. So that in itself would be interesting. There are so many different players, and that goes both ways, right? Like you just did Gobert. We could take another great player from today, drop him into, 92, 93, and if it's the right player, they'll thrive. I think Gobert would be great in that grinded up style because the lane is clogged and everything is funneled to the rim where he'll be waiting for you. You didn't have to worry about nearly as many catch and shoot defends. Bigs didn't have to play in space as much. So it would be beneficial to him. I think he'd be more effective in the regular season. I don't know about the playoffs because it's completely different. The only thing I would worry about with Rudy in that era is because of the style of play, would he have a long career? You know what I mean? Like, would he have a long career? Would he be built for that?
I think it would be one of those careers where it would be shorter, but I think he would peak insanely high as a defender.
Agreed. Like, I don't doubt that. I agree.
I think his defense would actually be just as good, or if not even better, than someone, even the likes of Dikembe Mutombo. I think he'd be right up there, or even better than.
I think he would be better because he's more agile than Mutombo. So I agree.
Yeah, I don't think he would last long, but that would be such a fun watch. As somebody who thinks Rudy Gobert gets too much hate, I would love to see it.
It just hit me, guys. This is what we do on a and one podcast. Sometimes we come up with ideas. It won't happen tonight. But what if we did an all-time one-on-one tournament, right? Because in a one-on-one tournament, what you're going to get is you're going to get guys who were greater players losing to guys who weren't as great, right? There's a difference between greater career or better player and literally you and me one-on-one at the top of the key. That's a completely different situation. I think that would create some great debate and conversations because some all-time greats in a one-on-one situation, they're going to get beat. They're going to get beat by lesser guys. It's a fact.
Look at the Heatles. There are reports of Michael Beasley beating LeBron in one-on-ones.
Oh, Michael Beasley is a one-on-one demon. His problem is everything else that goes with the basketball. Like, no one ever doubted Michael Beasley's talent. What we all noticed is everything that's going on between his ears wasn't quite right. Like Michael Beasley's a real life version of can't get right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be players like that. Like, there's some guys you can see that can absolutely ball, but which might not be good in a 5v5 setting.
Yeah.
Look at, I think, another guy who could absolutely ball, who I'd be kind of scared of in a 1v1 competition. How about Skip to my Lou, Refer Alston? He was a straight street baller before coming to the league. Skip to my Lou was nice.
Look, that you know what? I talked to Chris about this, and I'm talking to you about it now. I like the idea of doing it just like you would do college basketball. You would have guys that would be number one seeds. And a good example would be Kobe would be a number one seed, right? Coming out of a certain region. And Jordan would be a number one seed. And LeBron would be a number one seed, and Kareem and Durant. Like, you would have certain guys that would be number one seeds. Maybe Melo's a number two seed somewhere in a certain. But my point is, you would have. I would have to caution everybody that would get into this that if you saw, let me give an example. If you saw Larry Bird lose one-on-one to Kevin Durant, that's plausible. That could really happen. That more than likely would happen. Now, if you put Larry Bird at his peak on the floor with four other guys and Kevin Durant at his peak with four other guys, Larry Bird's team's going to win. He'll be the best player on the floor. But one-on-one is a completely different animal.
I would say another name to look out for that, man. Adrian Dantley from the 80s.
That's the teacher. The teacher.
That dude, like, in the span of team ball, I always find him interesting because every single time he left a team, they got better. But he was always averaging like 30 a game for like 5 or 6 years straight. Like, that dude could get buckets.
Win or lose, AD was going to get buckets. The problem with AD was AD played for AD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why trading him for someone like Mark Aguirre in the Detroit trade really ended up benefiting the Pistons because he's more of a team player, unlike AD, who's more about AD.
Facts. There are so many great scorers that you could think of when you want to put together some kind of field like that. I guess there would have to be a cutoff, obviously, but it would be entertaining just for the fact the crazy matchups that you would get that you could dream about. You could get that dream matchup of Steph Curry and Iverson one-on-one. And that's Steph shooting and his handle. And I know the argument is, Well, AI can't stop Steph. If AI got the ball first, what is the likelihood that Steph's going to stop him? I'm just saying.
I was going to say, there's no way Steph would stay in front of AI. He just have to hope that when he pulls up from the midi, he misses.
He would have to concede the jump shot and just hope it's not hitting. If AI's jump shot's hitting, you've lost. You might as well go home. But that's your only hope. Unless you're 6'6", 6'7", and you're quick enough to make up the ground and contest his shot, like maybe a Kobe or a T-Mac, somebody like that. But Steph's not that much bigger than AI. He wouldn't be able to make up that kind of difference. Like, that would be a great one-on-one matchup. I'm guessing a lot of people would favor Steph, and I totally understand that. But I'd love to see that matchup. I think we would have to find a way to where everybody could kind of have an opinion, and maybe you could vote on it some kind of way. Like, we don't have all the mechanisms, but I want to see those kind of one-on-ones. I'll give you an example. Magic Johnson is my favorite player of all time. No question. That's my guy. Greatest point guard, I think, in the history of basketball. But what if Magic Johnson played Carmelo Anthony, both at their peak, in a game of one-on-one? I love Magic Johnson. I don't think Magic Johnson could beat Carmelo Anthony in a game of one-on-one. I don't. Now, somebody might say that's crazy, and they'll talk about numbers, and I'm like, dude, you have to really think about that for a minute. There's nothing Magic Johnson could do with Carmelo Anthony but hope he gets tired of just backing him down or overpowering him or bully balling him or just raising up on him like that. That is just a reality of what would happen in that one-on-one matchup. And I know that, and Magic's my guy, and I know that.
Oh, absolutely. Carmelo's specialty was scoring in a phone booth. He was an absolute one-on-one menace. As somebody who was in New York from 2011 to like 2016, I pretty much got to witness the full Melo in New York tenure outside of like the half season after he got traded from Denver to New York. And that's one thing for certain is Carmelo could get buckets whenever he wanted to.
I would tell everybody New York Melo was pretty good. Denver Carmelo was the better Carmelo. Denver Carmelo was the guy with the crazy handle. Denver Carmelo had hops. If you don't know, look it up on YouTube. It's a great video of Carmelo crossing up Manu Ginobili and dunking on him. The Denver Carmelo was a handful.
Yeah, it's too bad Carmelo couldn't at least make it to one finals. I'd love to see him win a ring. I just think with Carmelo, he needed a veteran point guard, somebody to help him. I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as he got Chauncey in Denver, they go to the Western Conference Finals.
Right.
The Knicks' best run, who is the point guard? Jason Kidd. So he's definitely somebody that needed to be put into the right spot to score, but man, what a scorer he was, especially in Denver.
And let's be fair, it's hard. It's hard to get to finals. Like when people go, well, Melo never got to a final. He had a shot, but guess who he came up against? He came up against Kobe and Gasol. Wasn't going to happen.
I think people forget how hard it is to make it to the finals just because almost you see runs like LeBron just had where he went to 8 straight. You see the Warriors go to 5 in a row. And the Bulls go to, to 6 and 8 years. And it almost feels like it kind of dumbs it down. People are like, well, these guys can do it. Why can't everybody else? You need the perfect storm, the perfect situation, the perfect coaching, no injuries, all the luck goes your way.
The perfect superstar. And you're right. I think people forget when you look at those franchises, you just brought it up. When you went from Magic's Lakers, Birds, Celtics, Isaiah's Pistons, then it was Jordan's Bulls. And after Jordan's Bulls, it was Duncan's Spurs. And in between that, you had the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, and then eventually came up to the Warriors, and the Heat won a couple. But it's not like there's 15 teams that we're talking about. That's how hard it is to get to a finals.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why when it comes to finals, people start bashing guys for not being able to make it, and just kind of it's a lot harder than you think. That there's certain guys, obviously for doing a GOAT debate, then you need to bring up finals, but there's a lot of guys who they'll just randomly bring it into the conversation. It's a hard thing to do. Just appreciate players for who they were and how they played, and who cares if they went to the finals or not? Just appreciate these guys.
And I'm for that. I'm for propping up great players of all eras. The conversation only gets a little bit complicated when you want to have that conversation, right? When you want to say, well, give me your 10 greatest players of all time. Then what are you going to bring in? Once you go beyond their numbers, once you go beyond their accolades, the next thing you're going to talk about is what did they do in the postseason? What did they accomplish? That's just, whether we like it or not, that will eventually shrink down and become part of that conversation. It's because you have a select few guys. When you say top 10 all time, that is a small group. And when you think about all the players that played in the history of basketball.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's such a variation of lists and everything that you can do. Just nothing's ever going to be fluid with that for sure. I think my only locks for like the top 15, I think that if you were the main catalyst of a dynasty, then you're a lock for a top 15 player of all time. I'm talking like, Bird, Kobe, 1-5, Tim Duncan, like Steph Curry, like if you're one of those guys that was the backbone to a dynasty,
sure.
Top 15 of all time, for sure. No question about it.
I'm on board with you 100%. You are talking about guys like Bird and Kareem and Magic. You just brought up what Steph and them have done, Duncan and the culture that they built in San Antonio. I think all that fits into the equation, and that makes you in that top 15. If we're talking about the greatest of the greats, and they're all in the same, let's say, luxury hotel, well, those guys, Duncan and Bird and Kobe, those guys are they're in the top suite, right? They're in the penthouse, because we're talking about guys that won multiple rings, were the catalyst to multiple championships. So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I know this wasn't one of the topics, but you know what?
It wasn't.
Something that's always annoyed me about trying to rank players, though, and I don't know how you feel about this one, but I feel like we overrate guys who are like the second, third, and like fourth best players on the dynasty. And
not me.
I say, like, what I mean by that is I've seen a couple of, top 10 power forward lists that put Dennis Rodman as a top 10 power forward of all time. And I'm like, listen, Dennis Rodman was great. He was a great impact player, and he's a good player. But there's absolutely no way that he was a top 10 power forward to ever play the game. I don't know if you can argue top 20. I think closer to like 20-25 range would be better for him, but it
would be further back. I think what people need to remember about Rodman was you also have to ask this question when you're talking about top 20 players of all time. Can you ever be the centerpiece of a team? Dennis Rodman was a complementary player. No team was going to go, we got Dennis, now we can build around Dennis. That's not how that would ever work. He was a terrific player, but he was a complementary player.
No, absolutely. And I see it too with like Clay, for example. I'll see him in top 10 shooting guard lists. I'm like, I don't think so. I think he's farther back too than top 10, but he's very good. But
so it's nuance, right? If you just left it at shooting guards in the sense of literally how well they shoot, yes, easily Clay's probably top 5. But when you're talking about the position of two guard, no, he's not top 10. They need to stop. Calm down. Great player. But you're not going to look at him and look at some of the other great two guards and go, well, him and Clay, they're about even. It's a little bit more than that. It takes a little bit more than that. And we can celebrate a guy like Clay's career, but you brought up something when you started this, but we can't celebrate it to the point where we overrank his career. And we've been doing that for years. That's not new. Because you can be the second best player on a dynasty, and you're a terrific player unto you, but being the second best player, that didn't mean like, well, me and the best player, it's that close. On a Monday, I'm a little bit better than him. You know what I mean? Like that's not the case at all. You are, in fact, the second best player, and the other guy is the dude. There is a separation.
Oh, yeah, no, 100% agree. And, of course, next, 88% of the league just became available for trade. Happy December 15th, the official start of trade season. But before we get into that, a quick word from some of the guys.
What's up, everybody? It's Cottrell Simpson with Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, where we're going to cover all things breaking news, sports related. We're going to preview games, and we're also going to give you our reaction to games that have happened before. You can catch us on Wednesdays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if you miss us there, no worries. You can also catch us on Roku with Northeast Streaming Sports Productions from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Hey, and listen, if you're not into all sports and just NFL, we have Sideline to Sideline. That's on Thursday nights from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8 p.m. We'll break down the NFL week, the Thursday night game, and we'll preview all NFL action.
And if you're like me and college football is your fix, tune in every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Coast to Coast College Football pregame show. We'll review the previous week's action, the day's biggest games. We'll give you our pick'ems, and we'll even give you some teams that are on upset alert.
And if you don't catch us live, you can download us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We do also have a YouTube station, Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, yeah. Check out those guys at Wire to Wire. They absolutely know what they're talking about. They're on a
Wise
Wednesday.
man.
So, once again, we're December 15th did pass. Now we can start trading guys from the offseason. Mo, is there anybody off the top of your head that you'd want to see moved, you think should get moved because they don't fit, or what's your take on trade season starting?
I know that a hot name that people have been talking about going back a month ago, maybe longer, is Zach LaVine, right? A lot of people are talking about Chicago. And look, I think that threesome of DeRozan, LaVine, and Vooch, you can break that up right now. We've seen this book before. The ending will be the same. They won't make the playoffs. And more importantly, when you put together that nucleus and you pay the money that they've paid, you're not even paying for them to barely make the playoff. Like, you put that team together thinking they would be contenders. They're not ever going to be that. It's time to break that team up. So LaVine might be the hot name, but you and I talked about this before. A guy that a lot of contenders will be looking at, that will be on their wish list, will be Alex Caruso.
I think Alex Caruso might end up getting the biggest haul of them all, honestly. He has the most affordable contract. I think he's only getting paid like $9 or $10 million a year. He's definitely the best point of attack defender, and you can absolutely slide him in next to any superstar. My issue with LaVine isn't necessarily LaVine. Like, I think his play style has a lot of issues. But in all reality, I just don't think you can justify paying him $40 million to be your third option. Like, that doesn't sound feasible to me at all.
And to be fair, right? All number one picks are not the same. We would agree with that. Nobody would look at Zach LaVine. He was a lottery pick, obviously. Nobody's going to look at Zach LaVine and go, well, Zach LaVine was a bust. He's not a bust. He's far from it. He's had a very good career, but I would say that for what he was projected to be, what people thought he was going to become, I think he's underachieved. He's a good player. But the reality is his ceiling, if he's your best player, you're not a very good team. Now, if Zach LaVine is your second best player, or more importantly, where he should be a third option on a contender. If he's on a contending team as a third option, you're a title contender. That's his role. That's his ceiling. That's where he should be. And he's not alone in this. I've felt this way about Bradley Beal for years. He's finally where he's supposed to be. The only problem is the man can't stay healthy. There are no shortage of talented guys in the NBA. The problem is many of them are miscast as number one options or franchise players, and they're just not that.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said I think LaVine will end up being a very good third option. I just don't like the price tag, but I think in terms of just on-court basketball fit, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And I like
No, go ahead. I know you and I disagree. You think that he would be a good fit for the Lakers. Is there another place that you think LaVine could land where he would be a good fit as well?
All right, I'm trying to think of places for LaVine because I'm trying to think of players whose top two guys are just more defensively slanted. And I think that's really where you have to send LaVine, a place that more so needs help on offense. I think you could, I don't know if it would necessarily be an upgrade, but I think you could flip him to the 76ers would be an idea. You get Joel Embiid's rim protection behind him, but that also means you're moving on from Tobias Harris.
And he's played well, Tobias Harris has, and he's one of those kind of guys that always stays in his lane, a good team guy, good locker room guy. Chemistry also matters too as well when you're putting together roster construction. On paper, you would go, well, if we had Embiid who gives you 30 a night, Maxi's good for 25, Zach LaVine would give you a third scorer who can create his own shot, and for others, that would give them another dimension. But would that work as well? Because it's not a secret, Zach LaVine, not the best defender in the league.
I think offensively they would figure it out. I think defensively and the chemistry would be the issue. It's like you said, I like keeping Tobias just because he's a great locker room guy. And in terms of scoring, Zach LaVine, I think, is a pretty big upgrade over Tobias. But I think Tobias is just better everywhere else. Like, Tobias is a more willing playmaker than Zach LaVine.
Sure.
Like, he's more willing to move the ball around than Zach for sure. And he's definitely a much better defender than LaVine. So
I would say this also, too. We talk about LaVine, a guy that I want to see moved, that I've been wanting to see moved, because I literally think this one player is the anchor around this franchise neck. I want to see the Knicks move Julius Randle. I think he's got to go for them to look. It could be like Philly with Harden. If they got rid of Randle and all they got back was cap space, I promise you, by default, they would be better instantly. And this isn't to say that Julius Randle is not talented. He is, but he's got a certain kind of skill set, and he's a ball stopper. I'm not sure having a Julius Randle is what I would call he doesn't play a winning style of basketball. It looks good if you play fantasy basketball because he will be productive and he will put up numbers. Get him into the playoffs where the floor shrinks and it becomes more about execution and defense, and he's a horrible basketball player. And for some reason, the Knicks front office, they do not want to let this guy go, even though he's the anchor around their neck. They don't need him. Jalen Brunson is their best player. Jalen Brunson is their leader. And it's no secret, I think you know this as well, that Donovan Mitchell of the Cavaliers would love to be a member of the New York Knicks.
yeah, I think if you get D-Mitch, you have to move Randall for a defensive-minded four. Because I don't see any other way that you're going to pair Brunson and Randall, or Brunson and Mitchell together. Because that would just be you're pairing two undersized guards. So you, at that point, yeah, you got to move on from Randall and try to find a way to add more defense to that core. It's funny. I saw a post, and this made me cringe a little bit because as much as I loved watching, Knicks Mello, I saw him make a comment that he was talking about how he can do something special with this year's Knicks team.
Oh, yeah.
And I cringed because I'm like, all right, but I'm a fan of ball movement, and now I'm putting Carmelo and Julius Randle on the same floor together.
Wow.
That ball's like getting passed once, and everybody's just watching those two go to work.
And that's exactly what happened. The ball would stop, and they would both be launching contested threes. Look, like I said, Julius Randle's a good basketball player. He has a certain skill set that has value in the NBA. Fit, chemistry matters. I don't think he was ever good. He was a good fit for the Knicks when they weren't good. But as they keep going up, as they keep developing the development of Brunson, and you see the improvement of R.J. Barrett and some of the other young guys, Julius Randle he's a hindrance to them developing. I think he's holding them back. And this isn't to say, like I said, put him somewhere. The problem with Julius Randle is this. He can be the best player on a team with a limited ceiling. But if you said put Julius Randle on a contender, what contender would he fit on? Because when he got to that contender, he would go there knowing on this team, I'm not the first or second best player, which means I'm not going to be jacking up 19 shots a game. Julius Randle's value then would be coming off the bench as a small ball five. And he could excel as a small ball five. The question is, not everybody has it in them to go, oh, you want me to come off the bench? Right? You remember that conversation a few years ago when they looked at Melo and they said, so how do you feel about coming off the bench? And Melo laughed like, they want me to come off I'm not coming off the bench. sometimes, look, if you're trying to win basketball games for the betterment of the team, it doesn't demean you in terms of what you can contribute in your impact. It does hurt you in the sense that you're not a starter, you're not the leading scorer. So when you start talking about individual accolades, that'll hurt you. But eventually, if you told me that Julius Randle could be, let's say, a key six man on a team that won 2 to 3 titles, wouldn't his perception or our perception of him grow more because he would be seen in a different light as an impact player on a team that won titles?
Yeah, absolutely. And he'd be looked at more fondly just because he was willing to make that sacrifice. And I have no doubt that Julius Randle, if he went to be a six man, would rack up a couple six man of the year awards.
No question. But most players, especially this guy, we're talking about a guy who's, I think Randall's what, 27, 28. So he's right at his peak. How do you look a guy in the eye who's right in his peak and go, we actually need you to come off the bench? like it's a real conversation, but I'm sure Julius Randle's not trying to hear that conversation. All I'm saying is if he's not on the Knicks, where would he go where he could be happy and win? Because I don't think there are a whole lot of destinations that are out there for him where he could be your best player and your team's going to win.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think Julius Randle's best spot is to a really bad small market team where he can be idolized by the local fans and really be happy because he's went there and he's putting up numbers. He's leading them to some more wins than they expected, but not actually competing for anything. So he makes his money. The locals love him. Like, I think that's really the best option for Julius Randle if he wants to continue to be the number one guy, is go follow the bet. Go be the number one option in Detroit. You go there, you get buckets, and they'll love you for it.
Right. And look, and maybe that'll make him happy. And like I said, I'm not bagging on Julius Randle. I'm just being realistic. If the Knicks got Donovan Mitchell, you're right, they would have to move off of Julius Randle. But what if they kept Julius Randle? He would not be happy. You're not going to be the first, second. You might not be the third option because Barrett is coming up. And Brunson is going to give you 20 a night. Mitchell's good for 25 or more. I don't know if he has it in him mentally to go, I'm still an impact player, but I need to step back. So instead of taking 18 shots a game, I'm going to average 12 shots a game, but I'll be more efficient. Like, everybody can't make that adjustment. It takes a very unique type of individual who can make that type of mental adjustment.
Of course, we saw the most famous example maybe of someone not being able to make that adjustment, Allen Iverson. Dude retired rather than come off the bench. So I know another name that's interesting on the trade market, and maybe, just maybe, if the Knicks want to move off Randle, could be a good target for him. Lauri Markkanen is now available for a trade. And it's not going to be cheap. From what I read, the Jazz are looking for a Rudy Gobert haul for him.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I think I actually saw that, and I like Lauri Markkanen. It's funny that you brought up Markkanen because in a lot of ways, he's very similar to Julius Randle. In a lot of ways, they're very similar. He's very productive. He's very talented offensively. But there is a ceiling. And Utah, they realize that fast, that Markkanen could easily be our best player. But if he's your best player, Utah, where are you going to end up at?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think if you went somewhere like the Knicks and accepted a role as like a third option on offense, he would definitely thrive. Once again, I'm just not. I'm sorry about that.
You're good. Clearly, that's a Julius Randle fan.
Yeah,
and I respect that.
He's ready to fight for Julius Randle.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with having a fan. No, I love Markkanen as a third option on a contender because I think he would thrive in that kind of situation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, if he went to New York and was like the third option and slid into Julius Randle's spot, he would thrive. He'd become maybe the third best option in the league, or he'd be right up there, honestly.
I think Markkanen is an interesting person that's out there because he's still young enough to where I don't think we've seen the best of him. Like, we've seen him take a step, but I think he's got another level. I'm not saying he's going to become a superstar or a number one option, but I do think he can be very impactful in helping a team win in the right role.
Yeah, he's so like agile and mobile for being 7 foot. It's pretty insane.
Right.
That's kind of what I love watching him on defense. Like he gets to a lot of shots where you don't think he can get to, and then boom, he's just there. Yeah, another couple names that might be available. Obviously, we have kind of touched on them earlier, or we've talked about these guys before, but we have the Raptors. They're at a crossroads. We have Pascal Siakam and maybe even OG Anunoby for the right price. So, you think they move on from any one of their forwards, or?
Well, I saw where the report where the Raptors are looking for. They want to get back an impact player, and they want to get back a couple of number 1 picks for Pascal Siakam, who's a very good player. I don't think you're going to get that much back for Pascal Siakam. I don't see that happening. Like when you put it out there, this is what you're looking for. I don't think that's a serious statement because you're not going to get that. Like I just no team's going to offer you that. And look, it's no secret that the Raptors right now are in NBA purgatory. We know you're trying to clean house. The only guy you're probably trying to keep for sure is Scotty Barnes, but you want to get off Anunoby, who's going to be a free agent. You want to get off Siakam, and because we know you want to move them, or if other GMs know this, we're not going to let you. I'm not going to highball you with an offer. I'm going to wait till you're really desperate in the last minute and give you an offer that works for me. So while I think they both have value, Brett, I don't think anybody's going to give them a king's ransom for either one of those guys' service. And they're both very good basketball players. Anunoby's a better defender. Siakam's a better all-around offensive player. Siakam, a good example, if Siakam went to Golden State with all the problems that Golden State has right now, and he played, and he could do this and do it well, he played small ball 5 for them. That would open the floor up for them because there's not any one center that can stay in front of him or run with him, and he can score from all 3 areas on the floor. And he's a good passer. That would work well for Golden State. If you're hell-bent on extending what's left of Steph's prime and trying to make another run at it, bringing in a Siakam would be a great fit.
Yeah, I think Siakam is extremely talented. That would definitely be an interesting construction for sure. I guess they have contracts to make it work. I guess the question is, are you willing to part with Wiggins to get him, or get rid of Clay would be the other matching deal?
I would have said no before, but because we're 25 games into the season and Wiggins, he'll have one good game, but then it's followed by 5 or 6 games where he's just struggling. I think they would move Wiggins. Here's the upside for Wiggins, and maybe a lot of NBA fans don't know this, or a lot of fans do know this. He is from Canada. So he'd be back home to some degree, and maybe a change of scenery and being back in his home country, it would invigorate him again. People forget Wiggins is still a young man. He's just turned 28. He's just hitting his prime. He should be playing at a high level for another 4 or 5 years if he can get his confidence back. So I think it's a move that could work for both teams. It just depends on what additional pieces you'd have to move along with Wiggins to get Siakam.
Hey, he didn't get the nickname Maple Jordan for nothing. Canada's own.
That's true.
No, that's almost one of the reasons why I think that actually would be a good one. Send Andrew Wiggins back home, and I think that might help him be close to his family. And
yes,
I think when it comes to OG, he just has to go somewhere where all they ask him to do is catch and shoot. Like a lot of people are talking about, oh, he can have a Mikal Bridges kind of breakout. The difference between the two is Mikal showed flashes off the dribble in Phoenix. OG has not. Like, OG is not good off the dribble. He's good at shooting the 3-ball. He's at 39% on the year. But his issue is if you ask him to do pretty much anything else besides shoot or cut, he doesn't do it well.
Right.
So I think he's a fit in a lot of places, but they just got to understand that if you think you're getting the second coming of Mikal Bridges breakout, It's just not going to happen.
No, but what he can do is he can solidify your starting five because I think he's a high level 3-and-D guy. And not just a normal one. Like OG's like 6'10", around 6'9", 6'10". So he's long. He can play both forward spots if need be a small ball center in certain lineups. So his versatility and his ability to hit the three, that's his value. And in a smart franchise, like a contending franchise, and I'm thinking of teams like Phoenix can't make any deals because they've used up every bit of capital they have to make deals. But Golden State can make such a deal if they don't get Siakam, or maybe a team like the Lakers are looking. Everybody's talking about the Lakers are looking for LaVine. Maybe they go, well, maybe we just need another high-level, versatile defender who can hit threes, right? Because LeBron plays best when he's got shooters around him too, right? Well, Anunoby is a high-level three-point shooter and a high-level defender who's versatile. I think there's no shortage of teams that would have interest. I think the Sixers would be interested in him. It's just about what would they be willing to give back in return.
That would actually be a really fun fit for the Lakers, because I'm just imagining in the playoffs trying to score against the trio of OG, AD. And if you really want to run a really big lineup, you can also add in Vanderbilt and LeBron to the mix. Just run Austin Reeves at 4 forwards.
That's a big group. Yeah, big and long.
You just go really big lineup, and it would just be absolutely insanely hard to score on. And when you have LeBron and AD out there, you always have a source of scoring. So
right, LeBron's going to draw double teams, and if you have Reeves and Anunoby on the floor, you still get spacing.
Yeah, the only hard part about that one is Jared Vanderbilt. I love him, but he does clog up the middle quite a bit. As fun as that would be on defense.
Vando can't shoot. It's a thing. He can't shoot. That's not his thing. That's not his stick. He can't shoot, but he's a hard-nosed defender. Look, the beauty of the NBA, and I've been saying this for years, is we talk about the NBA during the offseason. We talk about the NBA during the regular season. What we talk about constantly is who's going to get moved, what trade will be made. And after the trade deadline is over, what do we talk about then?
Buyout market.
Yes, the buyout market. We're not done yet, folks. There's a buyout market. And all of a sudden it's who's getting bought out and where they're looking to go. So the NBA, like no league, keeps you locked in on rumors and hearsay. They do it better than anybody. And LaVine's name has been out there. Anunoby's name has been out there. Siakam's name has been out there. At the same time, people are telling me Golden State's done. The run is over. Look, I do feel like if this is the roster they're going to go forward with for the rest of the season, yeah, I think they are done. They're not going to. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. I honestly don't.
It really doesn't feel like it. Just at this point, so many things would have to go right. Like Steph Curry's always going to be a force, but do you think Klay Thompson's recent streak of good games, can he keep that up throughout the rest of the year? Can Andrew Wiggins bounce back? Can Chris Paul not look his age out there? Like, at this point, the questions are just piling up, and they haven't really given us a good answer on any of them, it feels like.
And look, they're frustrated. Like I know, most dynasties, they don't end perfectly. You don't win the title, and then you shake hands and go off in the sunlight or sunset. Normally, you keep the team together too long where they start to age, guys start to break down, they're more concerned about their last big contract, and the dynasty comes to an end. It just happens. In San Antonio, it wasn't about money. They just got old. It came to an end because they eventually just got old. With Golden State, they've got two things going on. They're getting old, and Klay's looking for another big extension. Eventually, Steph will be looking for another extension. You're going to give Steph the money. We know this. Steph was going to get the money because he's still playing at a high level, but player development comes into play. Have they developed their younger players to the point that they thought they wanted to? No. Moody's going to be a good basketball player, but he's going to be a really good rotation player. He's not going to be a star. Kuminga will show you flashes. I don't think he's going to be a star. I think he's going to be really good. He's not going to be a star. And that hurt them because when they had all those young guys, you needed one of them. In a perfect world, two of them, but you needed one of them to hit and be the next guy. And Poole is really good. I don't think he was ever good enough to build a franchise around, but he was impactful. You would agree he's an impact player. And because of the situation with him and maybe him and other members of the team, who knows, they moved on from him. They never really replaced him, right? And then they moved on from Wiseman, who, look, I don't know what Wiseman's future is, but he's not going to be a star in the NBA. That much I know. And so that hurts you when you miss on those kind of draft picks. It hurts you going forward.
It really felt like that was almost the beginning of the end of the dynasty. Was the 2021 draft when they went with Wiseman. Like, obviously, they still won the title the next year, so we can't complain too much. But really,
yeah, but wasn't them winning the title with Wiseman on the roster? Wasn't that like when the Pistons won with Darko? It didn't have nothing to do with Darko. You know what I mean? Like, the only thing Darko did was ride pine and go out for beer runs. He didn't contribute. Like, Wiseman did maybe less than that. So they won the title despite him being on the roster, not because he was a big impact anywhere on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. It now, it really does feel like that. That was almost like the starting point for all this, and now it's coming to a head.
It is
because they missed on their blue chip prospect 3 years ago when they had the chance to pick up another one.
And drafting, the science of it is sometimes you just know, right? Everybody can't go, nah, Wemby for sure is going to be a dude, right? Wemby's going to be a dude. I think Wemby will be a dude. Now, I don't know it for 100%, but I think he's going to be a star. Now, what level of star he's going to be, I don't know. Is he going to actually be some kind of one of those players that we've never seen before that takes the game to another level? The potential is there. Maybe his ceiling is all-star. And if you told me, well, Mo, Wemby's going to make 10 all-star teams in a row, that's a terrific career. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's going to lead the Spurs to multiple conference finals and make an NBA final. Again, a terrific career. Or is he going to be one of those foundational league-changing players where you're like, Wemby's working on his 4th title and his 3rd MVP, that kind of thing? I don't know. I think the potential is there. It is. But it doesn't always pan out that way. You know, and I know potential and actually fulfilling that potential, that they don't always coincide.
That's why they always say the draft is a crapshoot. It's better to have multiple shots at, picking rookies because you just don't know how it's going to go. Sometimes that first rounder means nothing. Sometimes the second rounder you drafted is better than the first rounder.
Let's keep it 100. How many people thought when he came out that Donovan Mitchell was going to be what he was? A lot of people did not think he would be what he was.
Donovan Mitchell's draft comparison, I remember this, was Norman Powell. And coming out, that seemed accurate. Now, like I said, he came out of the gate and showed a lot more than we thought he had. Credit to him. It's kind of like, who would have thought that the dude drafted in the Taco Bell commercial, Nikola Jokic, would actually, win a couple MVPs? Or who would have thought the Pistons would just start nailing second rounders, but they didn't think they'd be any good? I looked into that, by the way. I found that to be so interesting. The Pistons from 2013 to 2018 in the second round, they drafted Chris Middleton, Bruce Brown, and Spencer Dinwiddie. Really? Yeah, they were killing those second rounders. They just didn't keep any of them.
Right, but if only they had kept them. Right. Yeah, look, it is a gamble at times, and the science of it is not always exact. And speaking of which, when I'm looking at a team like the defending champion Nuggets, right? They've taken a step back a little bit because Jamal Murray's been out of the rotation. Teams are triple teaming Joker at times now, and I do think that at some point they might address their bench because obviously they've got younger guys coming off the bench, but they don't have the consistency that they had obviously with a Bruce Brown and a Jeff Green, the veterans that they had in their places. So I do think they might make a move, not a big move, but just a move to shore up their bench depth. Because I still think when they're whole, the Nuggets are still the team to beat in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. They could probably conjure up and get some pretty decent bench pieces. We could trying to think of who they could really deal. Obviously, if they want to go a big deal, they'll probably have to deal Porter Jr. first.
Yes. And I don't think they want to do that. And I don't blame them. I love that once you get past Joker and Murray, you've got like two guys averaging 15 points a game, another guy averaging 12. Like they're very balanced. And the way they play, because they play through Joker, everybody's a threat on every position, or should I say every possession. Every team's not like that. Even as good as the Celtics are, when you watch the Celtics play, oftentimes Tatum will either dribble the ball up, hold the ball, and he will control the ball the entire possession. Brown will do the same thing. The Celtics are at their best when they move the ball, but a lot of times they do get caught up in ISO basketball a lot. And I think the addition of Drew Holiday in the bigger picture has been a success, but I don't think they've used Drew properly. Like Drew's a facilitator. He can break people down off the dribble and kick to people, but they don't let Drew handle the ball that much. Like Drew handles the ball. He's the point guard, but he handles it a lot less than Tatum and Brown. It's interesting to see how Mazzulla uses him, because for whatever reason, he literally uses him just like he used Marcus Smart. And I thought you were wanting more from that position.
And it's funny because Drew sometimes will do the same thing too, except he doesn't necessarily do a long ISO. Drew will just randomly come down the floor and take a heat check three exactly when you're not expecting him to do one. And that does hurt, but I do agree at the same time, like, they got to understand, like, Tatum can handle the ball and so can Brown, but they shouldn't be on it all the time. Let Drew bring up the rock and get these guys in the right spots, and I think maybe that's why this team, you watch them in clutch time and they struggle mightily, because they revert back to ISO basketball.
Yeah, too often.
Predictable. And now all of a sudden you start missing shots. These guys that were in a rhythm earlier, now they haven't touched the ball for 6 possessions, so now they're all out of sync. And you're letting the other team back in the game. We saw that against the Bucks, how they made their run in the second half. We see this against anytime the Celtics play a high-level team. They're winning, but they're never really able to put teams away until the absolute last minute.
I think if Boston's going to seriously contend for the championship, they've got to trust in Derek White and Drew Holiday more. That those guys, I'm not talking about who's going to be the leading scorers. We know who that's going to be. But trust that in a close game, if Derek White has the opportunity to turn the corner and attack the rim, or if Drew Holiday has got an ISO and a mismatch, that those guys can come through and they can finish. Because if you keep defaulting to Tatum and Brown playing ISO ball, in a bigger picture, you're really just the same team that you've always been, right? The problem with Boston, you pointed it out, is too often when things get tight or when they lose a big lead, it's because they reverted back to ISO ball, where the other guys are watching Tatum and Brown dribble to air out the ball.
Yeah, it was almost night and day with that first Bucks matchup. It was the first half they were zooming the ball around. It looked beautiful. Then we're down 20. Next thing I know, all of a sudden, here's Tatum, take it like 6 dribbles, sidestep 3, miss. Bucks get the run in transition. Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm saying that, Brett, to say this: they're tied for the best record in the NBA. They're still tied for the best record in the NBA. The Bucks, I believe the Bucks are second in the East, right behind them. I think they might be second overall in the NBA, and so they're right where they both want to be. I still look at both teams and think both teams, Boston could shore things up better offensively. I think Milwaukee needs to shore things up better defensively. The offense has come around. What hasn't come around is the defense, and I for obvious reasons, they don't have anybody that I would call very good at point of the attack defending the basketball. They don't have anybody that can really disrupt you and make you give up your dribble right now on that roster, and I think it hurts them.
Yeah, I'll give them some credit for improvement, because obviously when we started the year, the Bucks were like dead last in defense. but I think last time I checked, they have jumped up to like the high 20s. It's still not ideal, but they're showing improvement. I'll give them that. But that's something I worry about too, is point of attack defense. And I'll give some credit to Dame. He's competing this year on defense. I'm not saying he's good at it still, but he's trying. It's not from lack of effort so far. So I do agree, though. I think we still need to make a moves, and I think the buyout market's going to be our best friend. And I don't think anybody we necessarily need is going to be on there. Like, I really wish we can get Alex Caruso, but we are not finding that caliber of player on the buyout market. But I think we could still add some physicality or a dog. I don't think we go this route, but maybe we reunite with PJ Tucker. Who knows? I'm guessing he's going to get bought out.
I think he will be available. And here's the crazy thing. We already know he fits well in the Bucks system. He's a veteran. I think he just feels better in that system. And because the Clippers are playing well, but they're playing well in a style of play that he doesn't like. Like I was talking about the Celtics in the iso ball. Well, the Clippers, they didn't change their style of play, Brett. They play iso ball. That's what they do. Kawhi, you're hot. Okay. Let's get the ball to James at the top of the key, run a brush screen, create a mismatch for James, and watch James dance or penetrate a kick to somebody. That's how they play basketball. They play a lot of iso basketball, and it's worked for them till this point in the season. And I will say this, looking at Kawhi Leonard the last 7 games versus what he looked like the previous 10 where he was laboring, he looks more like a top 10, top 12 player right now. He looks more like Kawhi Leonard right now. The problem with Kawhi Leonard is, though, it's not how he looks right now. It's how he looks at the end of the season. Can he avoid some weird catastrophic injury that always seems to hit him?
It's him and PG both.
Yeah, and PG's out right now. Well, I think he's back now, but you look at both of those guys, and it's not about how good they can be. With the Clippers, the first thing you say is, can they stay on the floor? If they can stay on the floor, they could be an interesting team in the Western Conference.
I really do love with when people bash that we'll play revisionist history and they'll bash the Paul George, for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander trade and all those picks.
Sure.
I always get a chuckle out of that because they'll be like, oh, they shouldn't have made this trade. And my thought is always, yes, but if your franchise was in that exact same position in the year 2019,
you would have done the same thing.
You're doing the same thing. We're talking about Raptors Kawhi and this Paul George who just finished third in MVP voting, and you're telling me you're not going to move all these guys to get both of those players? Because that's essentially what it was. It wasn't just for Paul George. That got Kawhi there too. So
Kawhi put together the team that he wanted. Basically, the Clippers gave Kawhi the key to the kingdom to avoid Kawhi going to the Lakers. Kawhi got Paul George. Don't blame Paul George. Blame Kawhi for them giving up on Shea Gilgeous. But nobody knew. Like you said, don't do the revisionist history thing. Like, yeah, man, I just knew Shea Gilgeous was going to be all NBA within a couple of years. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that this guy has a first step that can blow by anybody, finish with both hands. He defends at a high level, an efficient score. If Kawhi knew that, if you could play hindsight games, then Kawhi would have been like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to take Shea Gilgeous and PG, you stay where you're at. Like nobody could have seen that. He's turned into a terrific basketball player. But like you said, in the moment, in that offseason, you would have got Paul George too.
And, let's be real too. Even back then, Kawhi would prefer to play an ISO style of basketball. With as much as Kawhi would need the ball, would Shea have developed the same and grew the same like he did in OKC? Absolutely not.
It's a good point.
That team is all tailored, built around Shea. That he's at his best with the ball in his hands. And if you keep him in Los Angeles with Kawhi, that ball's not in his hands anymore.
And let me just add this. One of the reasons why the Chet Holmgren is having the type of rookie season that he's having, one, yes, he's talented and he's versatile, but more importantly, he gets to play off an all-NBA player. He gets the benefit of playing off an all-NBA player that I could argue, I don't even think Shea's in his prime yet. I don't think he's hit his prime yet. The scary part is I actually think Shea can get better. And I'm looking at OKC and I'm thinking, if they can keep that core together, if they can keep that core and just develop that core, this is going to be a team that's going to be competing for the Western Conference Championship for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I think the only one I think they'll eventually move off from that core is Giddey, because from a basketball sense, like his strength is playmaking. They already have that. I don't necessarily think they need the extra playmaking he provides. So I think he'll end up getting moved out at some point because he just kind of cramps up the offense. His defense is pretty good though, but I think overall they'll end up moving him in a trade for a bigger star when they decide the time is right.
And who knows? Maybe they move him. Maybe they move him this year, and maybe that's the move that gets you a Siakam or an Anunoby, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be an interesting fit for it. Maybe the OKC front office looks at their team right now and goes, I don't think we have to wait another 2 years. I think we're actually in a position, if we make the right move, we can compete this year. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying beat the Nuggets, but maybe they're good enough to beat everybody else and meet the Nuggets in the conference finals.
I mean, I think they are. Shea, whoever you're targeting, which that's also an interesting topic. Who is the best fit with Shea and Chet? Ironically, it almost feels like it'd be like a bigger guard forward, like a PG kind of guy, but not actually PG, ironically. But yeah, I think if you paired another superstar with Shea with the spacing and defense that Chet provides, yeah, that team is probably meeting the Nuggets in the conference finals. I could see that be happening.
They've got some dogs on that team right now, Brett. Like, honestly, the Nuggets have Joker. And there's, Chet's really good, but there's no compensating for Joker. But where OKC could beat the Nuggets is, I think if you go top to bottom, OKC is deeper on the back end. They're a deeper team right now than the world champs are. The only question is, can your starting five hang with their starting five? Because when they're at their best and Aaron Gordon and Carter Jr. is making jump shots, and then you got the two-man game with Joker and Jamal Murray, and then KCP spotting up and hitting deep threes. If you can't compete with their starting five, you can't compete with the Nuggets.
Yeah, that's almost the key to beating Denver. Just don't get absolutely obliterated in the minutes the starting five plays, because you can beat the bench unit.
Right.
You just got to make sure not to get walked down completely by the starters, which is a tough task when you have Jokic.
Because all five starters are double-digit scorers. And when he's in his bag, Jamal Murray's ability, his shot creation and shot making ability is like next level. He's one of those guys that you can tell he's built for the big moment.
And if you doubt that, definitely weren't watching that last playoff run, or
right,
even before that, pre-injury. Jamal Murray actually has an NBA record, the highest scoring game without a free throw. He had a 50-piece against Cleveland, shooting 21 of 25 from the field.
That's crazy.
Pre-injury. And it wasn't just basic, like they were letting him get layups. He's taking guys off the dribble and just stepping back and doing pretty much every move you can think of. He was just cooking that night.
Let me ask you this. When you look at the both conferences, and like I said, we're a quarter into this thing, 25, 26 games in, is there a team in the Western Conference that you think has been disappointing?
A disappointing team in the Western Conference. Whew. I think the easy one for that is the Warriors. They've been slightly disappointing, very disappointing. Let's see, we have Sun. I almost want to say the Suns because they're right now just sitting on the 10th seed, but I also understand that's also with some Beal injury. I think they're all rounded into form.
Those three guys have played one game together, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing: if all three do get healthy, and they get better in their defensive rotations, because of their scoring ability, I give Phoenix, which I guess you would call it a puncher's chance to upset a higher seed.
Yeah, I have Phoenix getting knocked out in the second round this year. I do like their scoring ability. My first issue with Phoenix is its health. Beal obviously has been hurt. Durant hasn't been healthy these past few years. And the one a lot of people don't talk about, Nurkic can't stay healthy either. So that we have three guys who are just walking injury risk. That's not good. And not to mention, Nurkic has never really been a positive defender, actually.
He has not.
You're looking at Beal. He's never been a positive defender. You can argue that your defensive anchor is Kevin Durant, which isn't ideal for a year 17 KD. So
right.
And when it comes to scoring, you look at big threes that work, and it's guys with complementary skill sets or guys that are completely different.
Right.
That's why I thought Damon Giannis could work, because they attack the game in two different ways that make up for each other's weakness. Go look at the Boston big three.
And I don't
say Garnett, defensive anchor. Pierce, here's your ISO scorer. Ray Allen, the guy that doesn't need the ball. And you go on and on. And when I look at Phoenix's big three, these are three guys that attack the game in just extremely identical ways. They want to stop the ball, they want to ISO, and they're going to pull up for middies more than going to the rim. So I see a team that's going to fall apart defensively. I think they'll always have enough juice to keep up with these other teams in the West, but I just think they just fall apart defensively, and their offense gets predictable in the playoffs.
And I don't know if you can shut their offense down, but I do know this. They don't play enough defense for them to shut you down. That's the problem. They don't defend well. And I know Frank Vogel has had the reputation of a defensive-minded coach. The thing about being a defensive-minded coach is you have to have players that complement your system. The roster construction of Phoenix, they don't have any defenders. KD's a good weak side defender, but you're not going to put KD in space on a scoring wing. He'll get eaten up. He can't guard. Booker can't guard. Bill can't guard. Those are your three best players. And you just pointed out, Nurkic is your fourth best player. He doesn't defend. And offensively, even though he's a big, powerful, skilled man, Nurkic is a horrible finisher at the rim. He misses more bunnies, more layups than any big in the NBA. I don't disagree at all. I give them a puncher's chance, but I think in the end, I think you're right. Phoenix is a second-round exit. And look, if they get the wrong matchup, there'll be a first-round exit.
And let's not forget the fifth starter is Grayson Allen, who also doesn't defend. So Vogel's a great defensive-minded coach, but he's not a miracle worker.
No.
And I'm not even sure if you could put 2008 Kevin Garnett if he could fill all the holes on defense in this roster.
Well, I think 2008 KD is yelling at everybody on this. He's yelling at everybody. Let me ask you this. With what Luka is doing statistically, the Mavericks, they started off really well, but they seem like they've kind of come back to the pack. Obviously, Kyrie's been out. I look at the Mavericks and I go, Luka's going to put up big numbers. We're going to talk about him as an MVP candidate. But I don't think the Mavericks, I'm looking at their roster top to bottom, they're not going to go on a deep playoff run either.
I think the issue with that is there's just too many guys you can play off of, right? So you can double team Luka and dare Derek Jones Jr. to beat you from three, and he's going to knock down a handful of them, but he's not going to hit them consistently to, beat somebody with them. Derek Lively can't shoot. Dante Exum has been good, but he's never been a consistent shooter either. So I think that's going to be their downfall is there's going to be enough non-shooters that you can disrupt Luka with a lot of double teams and traps and force these other guys to beat you, which I don't think they'll be able to do.
You know what? Exum is a good story. I love good comeback stories. It's why I always rooted for Sean Livingston. It's why I rooted for Wiggins, kind of reinventing himself. Exum was in the NBA. I think I could be wrong, but wasn't Exum a lottery pick?
Yeah, he was. I know he went to Utah. I think he was back end of the lottery.
Yeah, and he was horrible because the first thing people realized is he's quick and he's athletic, but he couldn't shoot. Couldn't shoot at all. Then he had a string of injuries, and before you knew it, he was out of the league. But to see this guy come back, put in the work to come back, and he's played well. He's been one of the bright spots on the Mavs. Like, and before you could say leave him open, self-check, he with us. And now Dante Exum is hitting threes. Like, he adjusted his game, put in the work, and made himself a respectable three-point shot. I just like guys that don't give up and find a way to pull themselves up and get back into the league. So big shout out to Dante Exum for doing what he's done.
You saw that up front and personal when they went up against the Lakers and he dropped like 25 on 8 of 10 shooting.
I know. I know. And I'm watching the game and everybody's like, well, we'll just let Luka score and we'll control the rest of them. I'm like, and as the game was playing on, I was like, somebody needs to guard Exum.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I've absolutely loved that comeback story. And, of course, speaking of comebacks, tonight we have the return of Ja Morant. And the question with Ja Morant, Mo, is the Grizzly season done with, or is there something Ja can do to salvage this season?
I think the way I see this is Ja is electric enough of a talent that he can get them to at least the 10th seed. And in today's NBA, if you get to the 10th seed, you're in the play-in. If you're in the play-in, then you've got a legit shot to beat those two teams at the back end. So I think Ja can turn them around and get them into the play-in. He might even be able to get – I mean, look, if you get to the 8th seed, you're in the play-in. So, I mean, it doesn't matter one way or another. But I do think he can get them into the play-in and still give them a shot to get into the playoffs. Now, this is all depending on A, he stays healthy, and B, some of the guys that have been out, like Marcus Smart and a couple of others, come back and they can have a full complement, because obviously Clark and Steven Adams, both of those guys aren't coming back. So I do think they can make a run, because the West is really weird like this, because the back end of the West is a lot stronger than the back end of the East. So they would have to go on a big run, because now you're trying to bring somebody like Houston. You're trying to walk Houston down, or somebody like that. And that's easier said than done, because the Rockets are a pretty good team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We I just actually got an update on my phone that I got a little distracted by. The Memphis Grizzlies did just beat the Pelicans, and Ja Morant hit the game winner. So
wait a minute. So they walked them down? Because at one point, I think the Pelicans were up like 15.
Yep.
Wow.
They won by 2, and Ja in his first game back, 34 points, 12 of 24 shooting, 10 of 12 from the line.
Like I said, he's that dynamic a talent. And when you have that kind of talent, what I would point out to a lot of people, whoever's in the chat or checking us out live, Ja's superpower that doesn't get talked about enough is his ability to get to the foul line. His ability to get to the foul line not just helps him, but it puts the other team in the penalty, which means it gives his teammates opportunities to be more aggressive so they can go to the foul line. He generates offense in so many ways for his teammates, not just attacking at the rim. So I do think they have a shot to turn their season around, as long as he can stay healthy and he could be committed and focused on playing basketball. I think the Grizzlies are going to get some postseason action.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that it actually is a talent to draw free throws. We make fun of guys like that. They're foul merchants, free throw merchants, but it's a real talent. Otherwise, everybody can do it. Take a look at, I think, a great example of that. You can almost see it watching the Bucks games. Drew Holiday is not good at drawing free throws. I think Damian Lillard has already attempted more free throws than Drew did all last year. So I think a lot of people don't realize that is an underrated trait to have, is to be able to get to the line.
It is. And it's for different players and different skill sets. Giannis is going to take 11 or 12 free throws a game, right? But he's taking free throws most of the time because other teams are like, we're not going to let him dunk on us, right? So we're going to foul him, right? That's why he gets to the foul line as much as he does. Most teams, when he attacks, they want to foul him before he can elevate and dunk. they'd rather him go to the foul line. So Giannis is going to always get 10 or 12 free throws a game. Dame strikes fear in you because of his range, but people forget he's also nice off the dribble and he can finish at the rim. A guy like DeMar DeRozan, because of his mid-range game and all the series of pump fakes he has a way of getting people off their feet and leaning in and drawing fouls left and right. Trae Young is another. Whatever you think of Trae Young is gifted at drawing fouls. He just is. So it is an underrated and almost a forgotten skill. But those guys that get to the foul line 8 times or more, they impact games by getting the other team in the penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I always love. Like, people blast Giannis for taking so many free throws. Like, have you seen these guys trying to defend him? That's the strategy. You know you can't stop him. So what do you got? You just got to wrap him up. It's almost like, obviously it's not the same, but it's almost in a sense like what teams had to do with Shaq in the early 2000s.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
You know you can't stop him. So what do you wrap him up, send him to the line?
I know Giannis has Brook Lopez flanking him. 7'4", probably 260-pound Brook Lopez flanking him. But I've said this for the last 4 years. I think, to me, Giannis is a center. He's a center. And he's the most unique center in NBA history because he's the only center I've ever seen that can go coast to coast with a basketball. He's the only center that I've ever seen that can break people down off the dribble. And I know officially he's the 4, but I think he's more of a 4-5 combo. I think because Brook Lopez basically spots up and shoots threes. Yeah. He doesn't live in the paint. It's almost like a role reversal. Brook's a shooting guard, and Giannis is the 5. It's a very unique group in Milwaukee, and it works for them. But I think that Giannis is very unique because he can attack you in the open floor. He can attack you in the mid post. He can attack you at the top of the key. And yes, when he gets downhill, it's almost criminal if you don't foul him, because if you don't foul him, your teammate's getting dunked on, and it's probably an N1. So yes, he gets the treatment that Shaq got in the the 90s and early 2000s, where you're like, I'd rather wrap him up and hope he only makes one of the free throws. That's your best bet.
Yeah, Giannis does play the 5, except the Bucks tend to save that look for the playoffs to avoid that extra wear and tear you get playing center. So I definitely appreciate Brook. Brook definitely helps with the floor spacing, and he helps. A lot of people don't realize this because they'll see the numbers like, oh, he only averages 5 or 6 rebounds a game. But Brook helps our rebounding game a ton because he's one of the few people I've seen on that team willing to box out.
Right.
So he's not grabbing the rebounds, but when he's taking out your 13 rebound a game guy out of the play, that is a huge boost for Milwaukee, and it's a big reason why Giannis puts up ridiculous rebound numbers. I don't know, I forgot the exact numbers, but there's a reason why when Giannis does play center without Brook, the rebounding numbers take a hit. And the big reason is Brook just willing to do the dirty work and the fundamentals and just put a body on their best rebounder.
It always comes back to the fundamentals. Like I said, Milwaukee's a very eclectically built roster. When you look at the skill set of Giannis, and now you got Dame, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, very unique. They've put together a unique group of guys, and they all seem to fit. My only thing about them is, yeah, I think it'd be really cool if you could add, call it a remix and bring back PJ Tucker to play situational minutes and help you because he knows the system. He could jump right in and be productive for you because that team, Milwaukee, they're built to win now, right? Everything is about right now. They didn't bring Dame there to go like, well, in another year or two we can compete. You bring Dame there because everything going forward is championship or bust.
Yeah, I do think that Milwaukee does have their defensive. I'm really high on the kid, and I think they have a defensive answer on the roster, and we've seen it a couple of times. Andre Jackson Jr., we just drafted him this year, but he is a dog on defense. You watch, and he doesn't back down from anybody. The only questionable thing with him is his jumper's a little janky, but He's been caught us off guard in that regard too. He's shooting well from three. He's been a physical defender when he does play. Granted that it's also led to him getting into foul trouble, which I'll take that trade-off. And he's actually a very good playmaker. Some of these passes he makes are absolutely insane. So he's somebody to look out for because I think that he's going to have a long future in the league. And if anything, he could almost be like a better version of Derrick Jones Jr. the way he operates.
Okay. So do you think that going forward as the season progresses, he'll be used more in the rotation more and more?
I think so. And I wouldn't even say it's a stretch that by the end of the year, if he can just have a consistent three-pointer, I wouldn't take it as a stretch at all if he gets into the starting lineup. Then we bump Malik Beasley to the bench. Because that's something that he brings, that one thing that we lack, and it's just physicality. He's an absolute dog on the perimeter.
I like Malik Beasley. Doesn't give you much on defense, but when he's on that jump shot, he can rain that jump shot on you. Like I said, I think Milwaukee, we're talking veteran team. I think that when they go out looking to add a piece, they will add a veteran player. I'd be willing to bet money that veteran player is going to be PJ Tucker.
Yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't mind that. I did love PJ in his time here.
Let me ask you this. You're a Bucks fan. They've had some ups and downs early in the season. What do you think about the chemistry or the relationship between Dame, Giannis, and your new head coach, Adrian Griffin?
I think they're finally starting to put it together, which is nice. It was a little rough to start, especially between Giannis and Dame. But and I think a lot of that was Giannis. I felt like it was mostly Giannis on offense. He wasn't used to deferring. So we'd try to run that pick and roll, and Dame would throw an entry to Giannis. They would go to, and Dame would move, and he'd be wide open, but Giannis would immediately turn to look to attack and not even look at Dame, who's now standing wide open, 27 feet from the basket, which is in his range. So that's one of the issues that we were having earlier is Giannis still being overly aggressive and not necessarily deferring to Dame more when it comes to the offense. I think that should be Dame's offense. Not saying that Giannis, can't be a big part of it, but I think Dame's just got to be the guy on offense. But over the time, it's progressively gotten better. And when it comes to Coach Griffin, that's definitely been some learning pains. And we had that report that Bobby Portis was challenging him to do better. And there are things that he's got to work on. But what I liked about him is he's willing to experiment. That wasn't something we saw with Bud. Bud had his guys. That's who he was playing. Coach Griffin has tried the guys like Marjon Beauchamp. He's giving Jackson a chance. He's giving all these young dudes a chance and trying out different things. And I think that's going to help us later in the season if we need to do something unorthodox, all right, or whoever needs to step in, they'll be ready. So
I think it's a learning experience. Like you said, you're a first-time NBA head coach, and you're working with a transcendent all-time great player. You could argue you're working with two Hall of Fame players, right? Dame and Giannis, and the stakes are high. I think there are going to be some hiccups along the way because you're going to have to be able to adjust. You threw out something that I think is really cool about Adrian Griffin is he's open to change, and not every coach is open to change. So the fact that he's willing to get the young guys in there, build up their confidence, put them in the rotation, like you said, a lot of veteran coaches would not do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was one of my biggest issues with Bud is I love Bud, but we always had if you're under 30, you were not touching the rotation until it was garbage time. And of course, speaking of young guys in the draft, before we get out of here, like I said, I thought about a fun little game that simple. We talk about guys in the draft. We go back and look at their player comp, and we talk about if they exceeded expectations, they underperformed, or they're just right. It was a good comparison. So I'll give you an example. I took the 2013 draft. I'll give an obvious one to start. Somebody said Cody Zeller was going to be a shorter Pau Gasol. Did he overachieve or underachieve on that one?
He didn't come close. He did not come close. Come on, man. Stop it. Another Paul Gasol? Really? Cody Zeller?
Yeah, a shorter Pau.
Wow. They
So
didn't do Pau right.
I try to pick some of the bigger names from this class and some of these are interesting. And we'll start with some good ones. Why don't we start with Giannis since we were just talking about him?
Sure.
Giannis, Scottie Pippen. I would say he exceeded Scottie Pippen.
He exceeded that one. Yeah.
As great as Scottie was, I think it's pretty safe to say that Giannis cleared him.
Yeah. Easily. And Scottie is an all-time great player, but what did Giannis do? He led a team to the championship as their best player. He's a multiple-time MVP. He's a finals MVP. Enough said, he exceeded that.
Yeah, absolutely. Scottie almost did it. He almost went to the finals without Jordan with the Jailblazers against the Lakers, but then obviously they gave up 15 in a row, including the iconic lob.
That brutal fourth quarter they had. Trust me, I was cheering louder than anybody.
I got another good one. KCP, Eric Gordon.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see that at all. I don't see that one.
Yeah, I found a different site that had all the different players from like the first round. I had a mock draft and they had all the comparisons, and they had.
I mean, it's
Gordon.
So the interesting part is if you look at both of them now, Eric Gordon, I think he's 14 or 15-year veteran. Now he's a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but he wasn't always that. So I guess in the long run, you could say KCP has become like Aaron Gordon, because now he's a catch and shoot. He's a 3-and-D guy too. He's a better defender than Aaron Gordon. So I don't know if he exceeded it. I will say that he reached it, right? Like
yeah.
he at least reached it. I don't know if he exceeded it, but he reached it.
Yeah, I agree. I think he met that expectation almost perfectly. Right. They are different kind of players. Eric Gordon's more of a shooter playmaker, while KCP is going to give you. He's also a shooter, but he's going to give you better defense.
Right. And he's a 2-time champion. So yeah, he exceeded it.
Well,
you know what? He exceeded it. He's a 2-time champion.
You know what? That's fair, and you can argue he was at times the third best player on that Lakers team, and even on the Nuggets. No, actually, I think I was just Aaron Gordon being the third best player on the Nuggets. Right. All right. Here's another interesting one that Tim Hardaway Jr., Larry Hughes, old point guard from that first LeBron team.
So I remember Larry Hughes, and I remember Larry Hughes came out, and he had a lot of hype about him. Everybody thought Larry Hughes was going to be a superstar. He could handle the ball, crazy vertical, very skilled. It's not that he was a bad player, because he was never a bad player, but he never became what they thought he would be. So when you tell me Tim Hardaway Jr., Larry Hughes, I don't see it. One, Tim Hardaway Jr. can't handle the ball like Larry Hughes. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He's a terrific catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but I don't want to say that he underachieved, because I would say that Tim Hardaway Jr. had a better career than Larry Hughes. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would say in the bigger picture, he exceeded, because Larry Hughes didn't have as good a career as Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah, I think as a basketball player, I think Larry Hughes, I would pick him to be on my team, but yeah, definitely I think Hardaway Jr. had the better career. So I got one more that's really interesting, but I want to give a bonus one just because I think it's really hilarious.
Okay.
And of course, I'm talking about Anthony Bennett.
Oh, the number 1 pick.
A more explosive Paul Millsap.
Well, they got that. Well, one, They got that really wrong. He wasn't no. That's an insult to Paul Millsap. He wasn't no Paul Millsap. He was more like the guy that used to play for the Sixers, Clarence. Hey, what is his name? He was going to be the next Barkley. It's Clarence something. I can't remember his name. Man, the name fades me. But yeah, that's hilarious, man. A more explosive Paul Millsap. Did they see him play? I saw Bennett play. What explosiveness? What?
And I was watching. I'm just like, I saw that and I kind of like cringed a little. I'm like, I don't think his game reminds me of Paul Millsap at all. Even if you
not
go
even
back
a
and
little
watch
bit.
college, I'm just like,
Right.
It's so funny because really off draft comparisons always throw me off. It's like the one time I went into a Bucks fan page and they're like, all right, draft. And this was right after we drafted Marjan. And I was like, okay, Beauchamp, who does he remind you of? The first answer I got took me for a loop. They're like, he gives me flashes of Tracy McGrady. I was like, he absolutely does not. Slow down.
T-Mac? Wow.
Yeah. See, my answer when I was asked for a player comp for Marjan Beauchamp, I think at his peak he could be like Trevor Ariza, very good role player.
Hey, that's good. I was gonna say the guy that used to play for the Hawks, Josh, not Josh Smith, but the other Josh that had the big afro. I can't remember his name. They were very similar.
Trying to remember. I can't remember, but
he had a huge afro, really athletic. I can't remember his last name. It escapes me. I want to say maybe it was Josh Johnson or something like that. But that's what I look at Beauchamp, he reminds me of him.
I'd say this last one to me is interesting. So it's for Rudy Gobert. Player comp, Tyson Chandler.
Well, that's not bad. So Rudy's big. He's much bigger than Tyson Chandler. Let's start there. And he's not as athletic as Tyson Chandler. But if you're talking about his impact on a game, I would say that Rudy exceeded it. Has he won Defensive Player of the Year at least 3 times, maybe 4 times? I want to say at least 3.
I think he's at 4 at this point.
Right. So, and I think Chandler did it once. And Tyson Chandler was terrific. Look, and to his credit, he was the anchor defensively on a team that won a championship. So, as an individual talent, I would say that Rudy Gobert has exceeded Tyson Chandler. But he hasn't had the team success yet.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Tyson was in the perfect situation in that Mavericks team that just desperately needed a guy like Tyson Chandler. Rudy's just a walking top 10 defense by himself. Pair him with Jaden McDaniels, and that's a top 3 defense right there.
And I want to give Rudy Gobert a lot of credit because I was hard on him last year because, like I said, they gave away a lot. But what he's done this year, he's been really good. He's been great defensively, not surprising. But when the way they use him now, they use him more as a screener, and he makes himself available for a catch or a lob or a rim run. So I like that they keep him involved offensively, and it looks like him and Ant-Man have developed some kind of chemistry. Not to mention what they're getting from the rest of the guys. Like that team, they don't have the best record in the West by accident. They're a good basketball team. And I think Anthony Edwards his elevation and his continued development, it makes them scary. And then you've got a veteran point guard like Mike Conley. You just brought up Jaden McDaniels. They're capable of getting stops late in games, and that's so key. And that starts with Gobert and McDaniels.
And a lot of people forget that when talking about the Wolves and they want to talk about last year, Karl Anthony Towns missed 25 games. A lot of people, they'll bash on him for shooting too much, but that spaces the floor a lot. Like Karl Anthony Towns' offense really does unlock a lot for that team. So missing him was huge.
Sure.
And it gives a second option to close out games besides Anthony Edwards, because as much as I like Mike Conley, that shouldn't be his role to do anymore. No. He's a little too old for that.
Right.
And obviously McDaniels and Gobert are very limited, so having Cat back to help Anthony Edwards close out games offensively, that is massive.
And having Nas Reed back playing big off the bench. Nas Reed is big. Like he's continued to develop. Now he's developed into a guy who can comfortably step out and shoot the three at a high level. You've got two bigs in Nas Reed and Karl Anthony Towns that are shooting the three at a high percentage. So it does space the floor and open up a lot of opportunities for Ant to drive.
100%. 100%. Well, Mo, before we get on out of here, anything else you want to talk about or say?
No, look, when you and I get up on here, I know that we have things that we want to cover, but because it's like two old friends just talking basketball, we kind of go off to the left, to the right, and then we bring it back home because you're just enjoying talking hoops. So I want to thank everybody that's up in the chat, everybody that's watching us right now, everybody that'll watch us later. Appreciate you tuning in for the N1 podcast. I'll check you out next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like doing the show. It's definitely my favorite just because of how broad the conversation is, but we always hit on all the points we want. It's always a lot of fun. So
right.
I'm glad we're able to do this, Mo.
No doubt.
And to everybody that's listening or will be listening, thank you, and please enjoy the rest of your day.